So welcome, good morning. Thank you everyone for joining us on today's webinar. Today is a very exciting day for REDF and our partners as we launch this first phase of the California RISE program and process. My name is Greg Erickson. I'm the Director of Government Partnerships and Policy at REDF, and I've had the privilege over the last couple of years to help create the CA RISE program alongside my amazing REDF colleagues and partners who we'll introduce to you shortly. The goal of today's webinar is to really review and focus on the pre-application process and the eligibility requirements of an employment social enterprise, which is the acronym is also ESE for those who may not be familiar. So this is the first stage in the full application process. So on today's agenda, we'll start with some introductions from our phenomenal CA RISE partners and provide some context setting about the program. Then we'll dive deeper into the eligibility requirements and discuss what is an ESE as defined by legislation and code. And then we'll review the CA RISE program design and model and what applicants that are accepted into the program can expect from the CA RISE program. And then finally, we'll conclude with some important next steps. Before I turn it over to our next speaker, just some quick housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our California RISE webpage by the end of day today. Also, due to the number of people attending the webinar today, we won't be answering questions live, but rather as questions come in, we'll take those and then we will provide responses in a frequently asked question document or FAQ, which will also be posted on the webpage. And with all of that being said, I will very happy to introduce our next speaker, Carla Javits, previous president and CEO of REDF, who wants to provide some opening remarks. So Carla, feel free to take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. It's incredibly exciting to be with everybody today. Sorry I'm not on screen. I think it's probably better for the sound. But we are so excited, and the turnout today, the interest in the program, it's really, really amazing. CA RISE is the first program of its kind in the United States that's really fueling the ESE field. Focused on, investing in your capacity and sustainability. And it's a huge validation, I think, of the impact and importance of ESEs and the interest of the state of California in growing this field. So it's a very exciting day. In addition to your hard work, we're really grateful for the support from the California legislature, from the governor, from the Labor Department and OSBA. Programs generating a ton of interest. We can't believe how many folks, hundreds of people on the call today. This is an unprecedented amount of money. Unfortunately, still unlikely to meet the full need. And, the truth is, in addition to the accomplishments of those that are funded, the fact that you all are so interested and there's a lot of demand is going to give a strong signal to the state that we need more support and ongoing support. So we just want to thank you for the work you do, your commitment to the communities you serve.
I'm sure Carla was going to end on a very, very impactful motivational statement, but having spoken to Carla enough and hearing her speeches, what she was going to end with is really just on a level of appreciation that this program really is a validation of the hard work of the employment social enterprise field and the impacts that you're having not only in California, but across the country. And so we want to make sure that we're able to continue to amplify your success and the success of the people that you're employing, and really continue to put a spotlight on that this program model is having a significant impact on addressing a lot of societal needs across our state. So thank you all for joining and for being a part of this webinar. With that, I'll keep it flowing onto introductions. And thank you, Carla. Sorry, hopefully I said that as eloquently as you would have, but maybe not. Anyway, thank you all. I'll turn it over to the next guest speaker.
Would you like to give an intro of Cal OSBA, and then we'll have Tina speak after you about Lendistry?
Shalon, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shalon Garcia, and I'm the Grant Program Supervisor at Cal OSBA. We're excited to be working alongside Lendistry and Rediff on what Carla mentioned earlier, is the nation's first ever capital and capacity building investment into social employment social enterprises. This program is key to the purpose of Cal OSBA, which is to our purposes, in which our goal is really to support economic growth and innovation for small businesses across California. Thank you guys for inviting us. Thank you for this team and collaboration. And I'd like to turn it over to Tina to speak on behalf of Lendistry. Thank you guys again for joining.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Shalon. Thanks, Katie and Greg. And thank you so much, Rediff. Lendistry is excited to be partnering on this program with Rediff and with Cal OSBA, as it also fits our mission to support grants and loan funding for underserved communities and businesses. We've partnered with Cal OSBA on several grant programs, especially across the state of California, one being the CRG program that gave much relief to small businesses in the event of COVID. And we're just excited to be here today. Our role in this will be to support with administering the actual application of the process, part 2 of it, after you guys get part 1 today. And then to support and aid in anything possible so that this is seamless and smooth and it supports those who need this program. We're excited to be here and can't wait to get started. Thank you. I'll pass it over, I think, to Shalon. If we're going to go, Katie, is that correct?
Yeah, to the next slide. Thank you so much.
I was gonna, this is actually Cassie's slide, my apology. Cassie, go for it. Yeah.
Thank you, Shalon, and it's great to be here, excited to be here. This is a very monumental moment for us in our partnership for CA Rise, and just want to express how excited we are to begin this journey with you all. So the Cal OSBA, the California Office of the Small Business Advocate, is administering the first statewide program of its kind, as mentioned earlier. This program will supercharge the power of California's employment social enterprises to advance economic inclusion and mobility for people overcoming barriers to employment through 25 million direct grants and technical assistance. And as Carla mentioned, this is just the beginning, and we really hope that this program will kickstart and begin a new space for us at the office, but also for those in California and the employment social enterprises in the state. So we are very excited to be here as a part of Cal OSBA, but also in partnership with Rediff and Lendistry. And Shalon, if you have any additional comments to add as well, I want to make sure you have space to do so.
Oh, no, that was great. Thank you, Cassie.
And now Karen will kick us off on what is an employment social enterprise.
All right, thanks so much. So we wanted to clarify, so today we're giving you an overview of what you can expect in the application process for CA Rise. In particular, this webinar focuses on the pre-application process, which assesses ability and eligibility to apply. There are two main steps in this pre-application process. The first one is this webinar. So any organization that's applying for CA Rise must view this webinar to continue the application process. You'll be asked to attest to the fact that you viewed this webinar or a recording of it. The second step is the pre-application itself. And this is a short application that will be available after the webinar is posted on the CA Rise website. All organizations that are applying for CA Rise must complete a pre-application. This pre-application will ask the organization to provide some key information that helps us understand the overall applicant pool and also helps us assess and screen for eligibility for this program. Only organizations that are eligible to move forward are going to receive the second part of the application, which is the full application process. More information on the full application process and selection criteria will be available at a later date. And the rest of this webinar will be focused on understanding eligibility for CA Rise and more about the CA Rise program itself. So moving on to the next slide. The first thing we want to clarify is that we've opted to cast a pretty wide net in our outreach, and not every organization that's viewing this webinar will end up eligible for CA Rise. So it's important that every organization spend some time understanding eligibility and thinking through whether or not they meet the criteria to apply. We'll share more detail now about how we assess for screening and eligibility for CA Rise, and this information should help you assess internally whether or not your organization meets these criteria and is aligned for this program. The first step of being eligible for CA Rise is to be an employment social enterprise, or you'll see it abbreviated in the rest of these slides as an ESE. So what is an employment social enterprise? We move to the next slide. So glad you asked. So an employment social enterprise is a for-profit or nonprofit organization that earns revenue through the sale of a good or service produced by employees who are overcoming barriers to work. Each entity should have a stated mission that they exist specifically for the purpose of providing employment, training, and supportive services to people overcoming barriers to work. Program outcomes are just as important as business outcomes in an employment social enterprise. So to help cement the idea of what a social enterprise is, we have a short video here that we'll share, and then we'll also have a couple leaders from employment social enterprises speak afterwards. Let's start the video.
Our economy works best when it works for everyone. Despite the talent and drive to succeed, millions remain sidelined from opportunity. They face steep barriers to employment. Barriers often caused and compounded by the inequities embedded in our systems. But there's a unique kind of business that reveals and reinforces their talent. Employment social enterprises, or ESEs for short, are businesses that achieve transformative impact. ESEs see people for the strengths they hold, not the barriers they face, and provide training, jobs, upskilling, and wraparound support so their employees can thrive. When they're ready, ESEs help people find their next good job and build a career. And we all benefit from the positive ripple effect that ESEs create, strengthening families, communities, and our entire society. REDF has been investing in employment social enterprises for over 25 years, providing capital, capacity, and community to fuel growth and impact. We also drive demand for ESE products and services and public policy that advances the field. There are over 700 employment social enterprises across the U.S., transforming thousands of lives every day. Join us. Create an economy that works for everyone.
All right, so on this next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about some additional nuance to what goes into employment social enterprise. And we know there is a lot of nuance, so we will spend some more time soon talking through some of the key elements of the eligibility criteria. But first, just to kind of recap and help clarify, here are some additional characteristics of employment social enterprise. So first, highlighting again that they are revenue generating businesses. So they may use fundraising and contributed revenue to help support their programming costs, but they do run actual businesses. They can be in a lot of different industries. So any business that you can think of can probably be an employment social enterprise. We've seen employment social enterprises in food production, hospitality, staffing, manufacturing, janitorial, etc. They may serve multiple focus populations or just have one single focus population. They can offer transitional employment, which means that an individual is in a social enterprise job for a fixed amount of time before purposely transitioning to another job, or they can be permanent positions. Employment social enterprises should offer supportive services and programming that enable success and help remove barriers for individuals. And these might be things like training, skill development, case management, resume, job support, etc. So we know there's a lot of nuance, but one of the things we thought would help ground this the best is if you had a chance to hear from some social enterprise leaders. So we have a few partners from social enterprises across the country that are going to share a little bit about their social enterprise models. And you'll see that it can be pretty diverse. So we'll first have Tamara Ryan from Women's Bean Project in Denver, Colorado speak. Then we'll have Dan Roten from HopeWorks in Camden, New Jersey. And we'll close out with Keith Summers, who is with GSG Talent Solutions, which is housed under Goodwill Central Texas, based in Austin, Texas. So I'll let each of them speak about their business and programming models to give you a sense of what each social enterprise can look like. So Tamara, you're up. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Well, it's great to be here today. Women's Bean Project was founded in 1989 as an employment social enterprise from the beginning. Sometimes I think of us like the OG of employment social enterprise. We believe that all women have the power to transform their lives through employment. And our mission is specifically to be as an employment social enterprise that is striving to help women overcome their barriers to employment and create lasting change as they develop stepping stones to self-sufficiency. We hire women experiencing chronic unemployment. So a typical woman we hire hasn't had a job longer than a year in her lifetime. She has a long history of addiction, incarceration, domestic violence, homelessness, all the things that, as we think about barriers to employment, things that get in the way of being able to get and keep a job. And we hire her in a transitional job. So she will work for us for 6 to 9 months. And she is hired for a full-time job. 70% of her paid time will be spent working in the business in some way. So we are a food manufacturer. We make a line of food products. Our original product was bean soup, and that's where our name comes from. Today, we have about 50 different individual products that we distribute all across the US. And we have grown to be about a $3 million operation from an original $500 investment in 1989. What's important, I think, about what we do is that, yes, we are a food manufacturer and we are also a human services organization all under one roof. So women spend on balance 70% of their paid time working in the business in some way, and then 30% in program activities. We do a number of assessments to help us determine what kind of additional help women need. What we know about workforce development is that it works better, it is more successful when we have wraparound services that go along with it. That's what the research tells us. So we do a self-sufficiency assessment at the beginning. And what we see is that, as by way of example, 77% of the women we hire today are either in crisis or vulnerable in their housing at time of hire. And when you think about all the things that come into when you have unstable housing, sobriety support is necessary, mental health challenges may come up. So we are providing a wide variety of support services in the 30% of her paid time to help her really become a more stable and therefore a better employee. We have a whole program curriculum, so we're focused on basic needs, and we're also focused on what we would consider the soft skills of employment. We're going to work on communication skills, we're going to work on planning and organizing, budgeting, basic computer skills. She's at some point during the program going to learn to develop her resume and cover letter and a letter of explanation that will help her transition out into the community. We will work hard with her to identify what her next job will be, which is a career entry-level job. And all the while she'll be working in our business, learning basics of food manufacturing. And even if that's not the career she will go to, she's really learning to come to work every day and on time, take direction, pay attention to detail. 70% of the women graduate our program, and a year after graduating, 95 to 100% of women are still employed. So we use this feedback to help us rejigger our programming as necessary on an ongoing basis to really meet every woman where she is and hopefully set her up for long-term success, because we believe that when you change a woman's life, you change her family's life. And I'll leave it at that, Karen.
Thank you so much, Tamara. All right, I'm going to pass it over to you now, Dan.
Hey, everybody. Great to be here. So excited to get to chat with you. I'm Dan Roten here at HopeWorks. We have locations in Camden, New Jersey and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Long story short, what we do is like what a lot of folks in this call do. Young adults come in stuck, right? Typically chronically unemployed. On average, folks who come into HopeWorks are making less than $400 a year. When they walk out of HopeWorks 10 months later, on average, they're making just about $45,000 per year. And our 12-month retention rate in those jobs is about 93.5% as of last month. That's what we do. And, this year we're going to place 200 folks in those living wage transformational jobs. So if you do the math, 200 times about $45,000 per year, that's almost $9 million of additional wages going right back into our communities, which is so exciting. That's what we do. How we do it, it's simple. It starts with training. Young adults come in, we train them in front-end web development, geographic information systems, other high-demand technologies. Much like many other social enterprises, the technical skills are the least important part, that we're also working with them using a trauma-informed approach to help them build the social, emotional, and professional skills, so they don't just have the technical skills, but also the job readiness skills to not just get the job, but keep it. By the time they're done training with us, they're job ready, they're technically ready, but they still have no experience. And that's when we hire them into our businesses. We build websites for companies all over the country. And we also provide a full suite of digital mapping, geographic information systems, and data analysis services to Fortune 1000 infrastructure companies. So much like many folks here, you get it. The young adults come in, train with us, get work ready. They work for us, they build experience, earn wages, and then we pipeline them right into tech and tech adjacent employers that are paying a living wage with career track opportunities for everybody. So really excited to be here and really excited to see the Californians kind of really making this huge investment. So next, I think I'll turn it over to Keith. Great to be here.
Great. Thank you, Dan. It's hard to follow Tamara and Dan. Y'all are doing some really amazing things, and I'm grateful that Red F invited us to be part of this. So I'm with GSG Talent Solutions. We're a division of Goodwill Central Texas, and we are a staffing agency. So we're a nonprofit social enterprise that began in 1993. Originally with the state of Texas, specifically focused on helping persons with disabilities or barriers to employment, medical barriers. Through working with Red F over the years and just the growth that we've experienced, we still work with the state, but we also work with private industry all over the Central Texas area. We've expanded our scope of services from just working with persons with disabilities and medical barriers to second chance employment, at-risk employment, persons who are underserved, persons who are undereducated. And I think what makes us really different than a regular for-profit staffing agency that is not a social enterprise is we provide those wraparound services to our temporary workers who are out in the field. If they need help with transportation, we help them get to and from work, whether it's to repair a vehicle or with bus passes, Uber, Lyft, whatever it takes to get them to stay connected to that work, which is life-changing. We help with groceries, we help with utility bills, we help with cell phone, anything we can do to keep them connected to work. Because what we found is when life happens, many of our employees would just quit their job because they had to take care of whatever that emergency was, which, as we all know, is going to just create that spiral and keep it going. But by taking away these barriers and keeping them connected, we're able to watch people's lives change and truly go from just a job to a career, and move up within an organization. I'd say 98 to 99% of our jobs are temp to perm. The goal for us is for them to move from temporary employees to permanent jobs with those organizations. Most staffing agencies would love for their temps to stay on their payroll forever. Our goal is to watch them fly and watch them become successful, because that changes their life and their children's lives. So in addition to the support services, we also provide a lot of training opportunities. Obviously, being part of Goodwill Central Texas, we have a lot of resources. So we provide digital education, financial education, soft skills education, both live and online opportunities for our temps to continue to develop their skill sets and grow their careers. We have case management that we can provide additional wraparound services and funds. We have retention bonuses for our temporary workers when they go from temp to perm. We want to track them. We want to see what those skills they learned and how they develop. Do they stick? So we offer a $600 retention bonus over 6 months, $100 a month. All I got to do is check in with your career case manager, let us know how they're doing. And quite frankly, even though they're not working for us any longer at that point, if they need help, we're there to help them still. We're not going to go away just because they graduated. That's something we truly believe in, and we believe that by transforming generations and empowering people through education, career training, and work, that's how you really just take your community to that next level. So I think that's pretty much it with Goodwill Staffing Group. Well, GSG Talent Solutions, formerly Goodwill Staffing Group. Thanks to Red F for your partnership, and thanks for inviting me here today to share what we do here in Austin, Texas.
Thank you so much, Keith. And a huge thank you to Tamara and Dan as well for sharing more about your social enterprises and giving us some grounding about what they can look like. All right, so on the next slide, we will talk a little bit more about some of the criteria that we'll be screening for in the pre-application process to verify whether or not you're an employment social enterprise. So we'll go through each of these in greater detail in the subsequent slides, but just as a high-level overview. First, organizations must be a nonprofit or a for-profit organization. So you heard from 3 nonprofit examples, but we do work with for-profits as well. And they can be standalone or housed within a larger organization. For-profits should be a social purpose corps or a benefit corp or incorporated within a larger organization. Second, organizations must demonstrate evidence of a mission to provide employment and social supports to a direct labor force that's comprised of individuals who have barriers to employment. Third, applicants should demonstrate that they're evidence-based and use data-driven policies in implementing their programs and procedures and in measuring outcomes. And finally, applicants should be producing goods and services for which they are paid and for which are produced by the individuals who have barriers to employment. So let's jump into going deeper into each of these different criteria. So on the next slide, we'll talk over the criteria of being a nonprofit or for-profit organization and some of the nuances we'll be looking at here. So the organization should be incorporated as a nonprofit or for-profit. You can see listed below the definitions of each of these things. So a nonprofit organization, a social purpose corporation, a benefit corporation, and what it means to be incorporated within a larger organization. I won't read through all of these in detail, but these will be available for you to review and assess whether or not your organization fits these. One thing that we do want to highlight in terms of eligibility, in addition to being a for-profit or a nonprofit, is that your organization needs to have been in operation for at least 2 years. So that means it needs to have been incorporated on or before September 2021. So if it has been incorporated after that, then your organization would not be eligible to apply. It's too young. On the next slide, we'll talk over the next criteria, which is demonstrating evidence of a mission to provide employment and social supports with job skills, life skills, and training to a direct labor force comprised of individuals who have barriers to work. So that means your organization needs to have some sort of stated mission. It needs to employ at least 5 individuals over the course of a year who have some sort of barrier to employment. You need to be the employer of record, or the organization needs to be the employer of record, which means individuals need to be on a W-2 or on 1099s. And the organization needs to provide supportive services. So you heard several examples of really strong supportive services from our 3 social enterprise speakers. And so you don't need to be providing everything that they're providing, but you do need to be providing some sort of supportive service to individuals that help remove barriers and help them succeed in the workforce. A social enterprise should be offering some sort of skill building or training. So that might look like on-the-job training, certifications, all sorts of other upskilling and training opportunities. Finally, what doesn't count for an employment social enterprise? We thought it'd be helpful to clarify. So employment that is just including traditional benefits, so things like paid time off or a 401k match, those don't count as supportive services. We're talking about supportive services and barrier removal that go beyond legally required and traditional benefits. And businesses that are employing individuals with barriers in an informal capacity, so they either don't pay or they are maybe paying in cash under the table, or it's like an unpaid internship, those don't count as employment social enterprises for this program. They must be a 1099 or a W-2. So on the next slide, we'll talk over the third eligibility criteria, which is evidence-based and utilizing data-driven policies. This means that the social enterprise measures program outcomes such as placement rates, retention, wages over time. So essentially you're monitoring how well the individuals with barriers to work are doing in your social enterprise. You're also using these data and evidence-based practices to help inform your decision-making around your business and programs. So as you heard, for example, Women's Bean Project takes a look at the different data that they're seeing and uses that to adjust and supply different types of services as needed based on the data that they're seeing. What doesn't count in terms of showing evidence-based and data-driven policies? Measuring only business outcomes does not count in this situation. So if your organization happens to be tracking business metrics such as profitability or quantity of product, inventory, margins, those are not the types of outcomes and evidence and data that we're looking at solely. We are interested in that, but we are also specifically interested in understanding programmatic outcomes. Similarly, organizations that are not collecting any sort of outcomes data or are not using it to support outcomes or policies in their social enterprise are also not good fits to apply for this program. And finally, the eligibility criteria of producing or assembling goods or providing services or some combination of both. So eligible employment social enterprises are providing a good or service that are sold to a paying customer. So there needs to be at least one business line in the organization that's producing a product or service for which you charge customers. So for example, Women's Bean Project mentioned that they sell bean soup mix. The individuals who have the barriers to work should be employed to produce the good or provide the service. The wages that the individuals are paid need to be at or above minimum wage in your local area. And the things that don't count for being an employment social enterprise under this specific criteria are, first, if you don't have any customers. So if you don't produce a product or deliver a service that you're paid for by an end customer, then it does not count for this situation. And if you don't employ individuals who have barriers to work to produce these goods or services that are sold to customers, then it also doesn't count. So if you do have a revenue generating business, but you don't actually employ individuals with barriers to work to produce revenue, then that would not count for CA Rise. And finally, if the organization or employment social enterprise pays below minimum wage, then that is also a disqualifier for CA Rise. So on the next slide, I've been speaking a lot about barriers to employment. So we want to clarify what exactly we mean for barriers to employment and detail some of what counts in this situation. One thing we also want to flag is that the language that you see here on this slide is taken from the legislation. And At REDF and in CA Rise, we will typically refer to some of these barriers in a different, more asset-framed way. So you'll see slightly different language in some of the pre-application language and materials, and we just want to clarify that the language listed here is specific to what's been pulled out verbatim from the legislation, but is not actually how we typically refer to things at REDF. So I'll read through the list quickly, and again, you can refer back to this. Displaced homemakers, low-income individuals, Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians, individuals with disabilities, including youth who are individuals with disabilities, older individuals, ex-offenders or people who have been justice impacted, homeless individuals or homeless children and youth who have aged out of the foster care system, individuals who are English language learners or have low levels of literacy or are facing substantial cultural barriers, eligible migrant and seasonal farm workers, individuals with 2 years of exhausting lifetime eligibility, single parents, including single pregnant women, long-term unemployed individuals, and such other groups as the governor has determined have barriers to employment. So there may be others that are not listed here, but are included as well. All right, at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Katie to talk over the overview of the CA Rise program.
Great, thanks, Karen. And thanks everyone for putting questions in the chat. We are seeing them and we will respond to them after the webinar has concluded through our FAQ webpage. So continue to put them in, especially as I go over the CA Rise overview. You're not being ignored, but we'll definitely answer them. So the last section we'll be going over today is a CA Rise overview. This section provides overview of the full CA Rise program and goes beyond the pre-application, which is the phase we are currently in. Next slide, please, Melvin. As mentioned earlier, CA Rise is the first of its kind and is looking to achieve impact from not only the grants given, but the technical assistance provided throughout the program. CA Rise is looking to fulfill 5 program objectives. First, larger and more sustainable ESCs that employ more individuals overcoming barriers to employment, also referred to as participant workers. Second, participant workers are able to have increased economic mobility and job pathways to higher income positions. Third, building the network of ESCs across California, so this cohort can support each other through growing programs and businesses together. Fourth, helping ESCs gain access to government services and grants when it aligns to their program and business model. And lastly, explicit support towards overlooked ESCs, meaning funding ESCs led by individuals with lived experience, who are leaders that have experienced employment barriers themselves, and additionally, ESCs operating in underserved regions of the state with characteristics such as rural, disaster impacted, and low wealth. Next slide, please. One of the ways we are looking to achieve these program objectives is by creating 2 tracks with grant funding and 1 additional opportunity that does not come with grant funding. These 2 tracks with grant funding are sustainable growth and economic mobility. Sustainable growth focuses on the business side of ESCs and works to improve financial strength and grow sustainable revenue and the number of participant workers employed. Grants can be used in a variety of ways that support business expansion. A few examples are provided here on the slide. This is not an exhaustive list though. Second is economic mobility, which focuses on employment social enterprises employee success programs. So those are things like Tamara was mentioning around supportive services and other aspects of the actual program. And the outcomes of ESC participant workers. Grants can be used in a variety of ways that increase and deepen the impact of ESC programming and jobs on participant workers. An additional opportunity of ESC fundamentals was developed to support small businesses that do not fit the ESC requirement right now, but are curious about the model and would like to explore it more. More information about this opportunity will be provided at the end of October. Next slide, please. For those admitted to the sustainable growth or economic mobility tracks, the program includes 7 components. First is grant funding. Second is government programs, where the focus is supporting ESCs and identifying where they can access government programs and funding. Third is monthly cohort meetings that promote peer networking and provide technical assistance. Fourth is relationship managers that are here to support ESCs throughout the program and have established meetings to answer questions and be a thought partner in solutions. Fifth is self-service tools, which provide information about different topic areas. For example, trauma-informed care and programming and pricing for ESC businesses. Sixth is optional workshops that cut across the tracks and focus on topics like fundraising, operations, and talent management. And lastly, tailored technical assistance will be available to groups that have specific nuanced challenges that are preventing business or programmatic growth. These components form the foundation of the program that you are considering applying to. Next slide, please. While this webinar is focused on the pre-application, we wanted to provide some visibility into what the full application will look like. Since this is a competitive grant, it is likely that not everyone that applies will receive funding. So we are basing selection on 4 factors. We'll be looking that ESEs demonstrate a clear and strong business model that demonstrates revenue growth and scaling potential. A strong business model that is, a strong program model that is comprehensive and data-driven in supporting long-term outcomes for participant workers with demonstrated results. Strong leadership with a vision for ESE growth and deepening impact and commitment to racial equity. That the ESE is in a stable financial position and has the ability to receive and implement technical assistance. This is only introductory application information, and additional information will be provided after we complete the pre-application reviews. So for these next few slides, we're in the process of the full application and program design for CA Rise. So these are subject to change as we finalize the design. We will communicate any changes to the program expectations or timelines that we're about to go over if any adjustments are made. So the program expectations for CA Rise were crafted with the program objectives in mind. The program expectations are to attend the monthly cohort meetings, provide requested data at set intervals, meet with your relationship manager at established frequencies, take the baseline assessment within the specified time, and use grant funding in the manner proposed and approved. We haven't mentioned this yet, but the baseline assessment is a survey that will help us guide technical assistance throughout the program. You'll see this terminology used in a couple other places as we go through. The intention of this program is to spend ESE time impactfully. With that, you may be wondering how much time CA Rise is going to take and can your ESE commit to it? The program timeline itself, after the application period is done, is 18 full months. The time expectation is about 3 to 5 hours per month of CA Rise programming itself. This includes monthly cohort meetings, which are slated to be about 2 hours, follow-up work from the cohort meetings, and relationship manager contact. Additionally, 1 to 3 hours in the first 3 months of the program will be needed to complete the baseline assessment. There are optional things that you can do that will add time commitments. For example, if you undertake tailored technical assistance, attending optional workshops, and opting into both tracks of economic mobility and sustainable growth for technical assistance. All of those would add additional time commitments beyond what is stated here. Next slide, please. We're really excited about the program design and getting the pre-application process started, and this is the first step. Our goal is to be as transparent as possible throughout this process, and there are 4 key steps in the application process for this CA Rise program. We are going to open the pre-application by the end of the day today, and we'll send an email with it when it is posted. Pre-applications are due Friday, October 20th by 5 p.m. Pacific time. We are aiming to finalize reviews and determine preliminary eligibility by October 27th. We will notify those who submitted a pre-application if additional time will be required to complete this review. There will be a gap in terms of when notification of preliminary eligibility from the pre-application happens and when full applications will become available. An updated application timeline and guidance will be provided after the pre-applications are reviewed. So additional context on the timeline to the right after pre-applications available will be provided at the end of October. The full application will ask for documentation to validate information provided in the pre-application and ask a series of questions that will allow us to evaluate organizations' business models, programs, leadership, and financial positions. Organizations that complete the application will receive notification of the award decision, contracting will follow, and then the program technical assistance will start. For organizations not selected for CA Rise, there will be opportunities to access select programming and resources from the CA Rise program. Additional information about those opportunities will be released after award decisions are made in early 2024. Next slide, please. For those that are accepted to CA Rise, the program timeline starts after the contracting process is complete. The first step is onboarding, which will take about 1 month. Cohort workshops will take place monthly based off of the track you select. That's economic mobility, focused on program, sustainable growth, focused on business, or you can select both. Baseline assessments will take a total of 3 months, with the first month involving you taking the survey, and then the remainder of the time analyzing and discussing the results. And again, that will help us guide technical assistance throughout the remainder of the program. We already talked about the relationship managers, but they are here to support you throughout the 18-month program design. Grants will be dispersed at 2 moments, which are when the program first starts after the contracting phase is done, and 9 months into the program. If an ESC is not meeting the expectations, the second disbursement can be withheld. Throughout the program, we'll be collecting data to help us determine what is working or not working and reporting on outcomes. We will need your help in gathering this data. There will be more information to follow, and we are looking forward to launching this program's technical assistance aspect in 2024. Next slide, Walter. Thanks. We'll wrap up with the next steps. So these are the 3 things that are coming your way. Also, please put any remaining questions in the chat, and we will post answers on the CA Rise website under frequently asked questions. We will continue to update the website as additional questions come in. As mentioned earlier, the pre-application will be released at the end of day today and will be due at 5 p.m. Pacific time on October 20th. On the CA Rise website, you will also find a recording of a pre-application walkthrough to support you in filling out the pre-application. It's about 13 minutes long. We will review pre-applications and provide us a decision by October 27th. As a reminder, to continue in the application process for CA Rise, you must submit a pre-application by the deadline. If you have any questions, please reach out to carise@redf.org. We'll actively monitor that inbox. All questions submitted to the chat today will be answered in the FAQ section of the website. So we just wanted to end on, that we are so excited that you are interested in the program and can't wait to learn more about your organizations. Thank you for taking the time today, and we look forward to getting the pre-application launched and we're really excited to get to know you all. Thanks, everyone. Awesome. We'll leave this up just for a little bit so that way we can collect any additional questions that you all have. We see them filtering in. Feel free to add them. And then we're looking forward to sending out the note about the pre-application later this afternoon or evening.